All right, this is part 2 of chapter 13, which is seed propagation. So we've left off with the germination medium. And this is showing you there's actually mechanical seeders. If I had a large greenhouse operation, this is something I would utilize, and then I can set it to the correct depth, the correct seed. There's a needle that actually inserts the seed into each plug tray. This is showing an automatic boom mister. So if I had a really large greenhouse setup, this actually travels along that track and is going to mist the entire greenhouse. There's a hose here too that follows along with it. This is a sub-irrigation system. You can see there's little pipes on the floor. They basically soak these for a period of time and then drain it, and they'll re-soak them again to keep the plugs moist. This is some other options that they have too. There's float beds, which is similar to the last one we talked about, and then they have the capillary mats. Capillary mats are actually made of a fabric that holds water when saturated and releases it to the flats as it's wicked up. And the float beds actually have styrofoam trays with individual cells placed in a nutrient-rich water solution. So transplanting. When you transplant a plant, so they have the plug tray here. Basically, they've taken it. There's no plastic around it, so you can see all the roots. This is basically a dibble. It's a hand tool for making holes, so I know, and some of them are marked like, okay, if I put it this far down, it's going to be 2 inches. So they're going to make a hole. In this scenario, they're going to do it to the depth of this plant, and that looks like it's like, broccoli or cabbage, something in that brassica family. So you're going to take and split apart where these plants are. They're also going to take the bottom of this and kind of pull the roots apart, because you're trying to make this plant decide that this is its home now. So they're going to take this, cut it apart, tease the roots apart, put it in here. They're also going to water it when they're doing that transplanting. At this point, though, the plant should be at stage 4. That was in that germination growth stage, so it's fully developed. As far as it's reached the final growth stage before it's going to start producing the fruit or vegetable. And this one, it talks about hardened off. What you may have noticed if you have mom, grandma, grandpa, whoever does gardening or flower beds, vegetable gardens in your family, they typically are going to take plants that they buy at a greenhouse, and they might set them outside during the day and then bring them inside at night. They're trying to slowly do the process of what they call hardening off. And I've done that for our greenhouse before too, where we'll take the plants, set them outside before we all go home for the day, bring them back in. This gets them used to weather conditions outside. And then after that point, they're ready to be transplanted, because once you transplant them, this is where it's going to live. It's going to be in the garden outside, where it's going to have to deal with the nighttime cooler temperatures. So hopefully it's ready for that. Seed selection. So some people are very brand shoppers. If you find a company you like, they kind of stick with it. Some of them are looking for a specific plant variety. So it kind of depends on what their preferences are. You're looking for stuff that's good quality, free of contaminants, has the amount of seed they claim it's going to have, and that will produce a uniform crop for you. Landraces. So this is talking about locally adapted or traditional variety. There's some genetic diversity here. Open pollinated heirloom varieties. These are ones that some of the different groups have really kind of glommed onto, because they really like these kind of heritage varieties of crops or vegetables. And this one, it says potatoes as landrace, heirloom variety, Cherokee, ear corn is what they have on for these pictures. So to most of us, we might look at this potato and go, what's wrong with it? Why does it have these white spots? That's what that variety is known for. So it's just kind of unique heirloom pieces that they keep producing. Wild populations, they also may talk about, depending on, say if I wanted to go into like natural resources conservation service type stuff, they talk a lot about native plant species. These are plant species that have lived here forever. Some of our plants that we're trying to grow here did not naturally exist here, and they may not do well. This is fairly uniform phenotype and genotype. they're talking about genetics again. So basically, they're going to look the same. They're going to have the same genetics every time. These native plant species can adapt to different areas. And a lot of times, there are going to be some simple varieties. They're not super fancy. But if you need something to act as like a buffer strip to prevent soil erosion and prevent runoff from any chemicals, you're looking for something that will thrive and grow year after year versus something that just looks pretty. Hybrids. So hybrids, they do talk a lot about hybrids in the greenhouse area. A lot of times you'll find they take one plant, cross it with another plant to make something that looks really cool. They are produced by plant breeders. The other kind of interesting piece is you can actually copyright a plant. Basically, if I took a cutting off of a plant, I could get in trouble because I'm not supposed to do that. Somebody has the rights to that plant and they're going to keep selling through their doorway so that they keep making the money. They can be sold as a seed. They can be sold as a plant themselves. Hybrid vigor is something that they talk about, meaning that sometimes if I cross two different plants, I get the best of both worlds, and that hybrid's going to be even better than either plant was before that. A lot of times to get a hybrid, you have to have plants of the same genus and species in order for them to produce something. Transgenic cultivars, these are genetically modified organisms. They are resistant to disease, sometimes herbicides. Anything that they talk about that is Roundup ready would be a transgenic cultivar that has been genetically modified to tolerate Roundup, which is a herbicide. They can also be genetically modified to tolerate certain insects. There's lots of different genetic modifications that they're trying to do. Sometimes it's used to produce higher yields, maybe something that tastes better. Lots of different things they try to do. Seed production. So seed production is kind of unique too. There's a lot of different things that you'll read about if you ever look it up. There are state and federal guidelines. There are certified seeds. Because here's the deal. I could actually take seeds, harvest from a field. I could get a whole lot of weed seeds in there. So it could be like wild mustard or wild oats that people don't want. That can't be in there. That's a big problem because we don't need to spread more noxious weed around the countryside. So this also talks about the Federal Seed Act in that chapter. You want seeds free of contaminating material, with genetic identity and purity, and also with germination uniformity. So if I go to plant them, we talked about this already, if I plant them, they're all going to come up at the same time and ready to be harvested at the same time. Plant Variety Protection Act. So this is the fun acronym for that. Started in 1970. It was amended in 1994. This is legal property rights protection. It's exclusive rights to sell, reproduce, import, export, and use cultivars and hybrids. A lot of the stuff that they deal with, you can get permission to do different plants, especially in the educational setting. If you have grandma's geranium and you take a cutting and make a new plant, you're not going to get in trouble. The bigger scheme of things has been like Roundup ready crops. If you have a big field of them and you save your seeds, there's been farmers that have gotten in trouble for that because it's a patented product. Variety patent requirements, new material that has not been sold prior to the application. It's distinguishable from any other existing variety, meaning it's unique. Uniform with any variation being describable, predictable, and commercially acceptable. Stable and when reproduced remains unchanged according to distinctive characteristics. Seed saving. You have to have mature embryos. And in this picture too, it's a seed sieve that's used to remove chaff, soil, rocks, and other unwanted material from harvested seeds. So it's just showing you that process. So in the top here, in this little bin, is basically going to be all the holes the seeds should have dropped through. So this is before the seeds disperse. If I wait too long and I go to harvest seeds from a plant, I might just knock them all into the soil. They should be taken away from the fruit, separated from chaff, insect parts, soil, foreign material. Chaff is going to be basically the hull or pod or whatever it was encased in. Should still have a seed coat intact or it's going to be damaged. Seed storage. Tricky part with seed storage, I got to make sure that they have the correct environmental conditions depending on the seed. It's got to be, for the most part, dry. should be cool, but not too cool. It kind of depends on the plant that you're dealing with, and that's something you could always look up. And it's going to take some time for some of them to dry out. Some of them you could let them sit in a cabinet for years and years, but they may not germinate at the rate you wanted them to. So they're not going to sprout like you would hope. Some of your career connections. You have seed sales representative. This is actually a really good job in our area. They market seed company products, cultivate client relationship. So they're going to work with people, sell them seeds. They should be knowledgeable about the crop or plant they're working with. And a lot of them associates or bachelor's degree. It wouldn't hurt to do an internship at like CHS or somewhere and figure out if that's something you like. And they have nursery propagator. So these are people that germinate and grow bare root seedlings. They transplant plugs. They mix soil. A lot of hands-on stuff. High school diploma would be great. But they should be pretty knowledgeable about plants, or at least enjoy them and be willing to learn about them. So that is the end of chapter 13, all about seed propagation. So now you know how to make more of a plant. And you guys will have a lab to do with this as well, your seed germination lab.